This video provides important information explaining the connections between learning theory and how this course has been structured. I intend this as an advanced organizer. 1, sharing the way I use learning theory to guide the design. 2, to provide an orientation to the learning sciences and some important learning theories. And 3, to expose you to some of the specialist language that we use in instructional design and the learning sciences. The learning goals for this module and engaging with the instructional materials are as follows. First, to obtain a more informed perspective on the wide range of career classifications associated with the field of instructional design. To begin to recognize some of the overlapping and the distinctive components associated with different job titles, different job duties, and different really awesome things that you get to do. 3, begin to recognize some of the overlapping and distinctive elements associated with instructional design, e-learning experience design, and the other wide variety of identifiers used in this field. And 4, to recognize some of the key practices and ways of engaging in this field. What I want you to notice is that the objectives align with what I'm going to ask you to do in order to engage in learning and with the outcomes. So, a reminder of our goals here. Broad summary of our course goals is developing contextual familiarity with the field, connecting with learning models and theories, to learning interventions, and experience the way that specialists and experts engage in their work, the way they talk, the way they behave. Essentially, what does it mean to be a participant in this field? What does it mean to be an expert in this field? Our overarching program goal is very connected to facilitate your progression towards thinking, acting, performing as an exceptionally effective, creative, and innovative learning experience design professional. Now, what I want to distinguish here is that although the title of the program is Instructional Design and Learning Technologies, we're really focusing on facilitating our students toward broad careers in learning experience design. That's important to point out. We stuck with the title of instructional design because it was something that people understood, and it was something not only that potential students would understand, but it was definitely something that administration, who had to approve the program in order for it to be able to be developed, they had no idea what learning experience design was. And so we went with instructional design. For all intents and purposes, when I use instructional design or learning experience design, I'm using those terms interchangeably for learning experience design, unless I tell you otherwise specifically. The learning process. Let me explain a little bit about what I'm expecting of you, and also explain how I have structured this. But what you need to know here is that the learning process is grounded in the learning sciences. So I have reason for why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. So, active, thoughtful, and critical exploration and engagement with instructional materials. So when I say critical, what I want to point out here is that critical is another way of saying analytical, using critical thinking, questioning the ideas presented, seeing how you feel, how you think about the ideas presented, And it's a way for you, think about it this way, to when you're reading something, when you're watching something, when you're engaging with learning materials in any way, shape, or form, your job is to be actively involved and always thinking, who is this? Who is the author here? What is their agenda? What is their purpose? And why should you believe what they have to say? Do you believe what they have to say? In what ways? To what extent? So it should be a continual questioning. Then the other feature here is situated and contextual engagement with the work, the work and the thoughts of experts, their work processes. So it's how they work, why they work, how they do their work, why they do their work the way that they do, how they're thinking about their work while they're doing it. And then the artifacts produced by members of the field. Now, artifacts, I know when I got into my master's program, that was a term that really blew me away because I thought, artifacts, are you serious? Artifacts, aren't those something in a museum or something like that? No. I learned that no, in fact, artifacts are basically the outcomes that are produced. So an artifact that an instructional designer might produce could be a tip sheet for helping someone learn how to use a computer system. It could be a variety of different job aids to help people help workers understand better workflow processes. An artifact could be for an e-learning designer, a published course, a module, an intervention. Those are all considered artifacts. White papers, usage studies, case studies, those are also artifacts. And so as you engage with the learning materials, you'll start expanding your awareness of what those potential quote unquote artifacts might be. The other component here is regular reflection on your personal learning trajectory in conjunction with your emerging understandings of what it means to move from where you're at now, which is you're novice or relatively novice in this field. And as you move towards having expertise and skills and knowledge and practice in the field. So basically this is, let's bottom line it in regular talk just between you and me. This is you just spending some time thinking about, what are you learning? How's it going? Do you feel like you're starting to develop some expertise? Doesn't have to be anything more fancy than that, but this is our fancy academic language. All right, so the next thing is active, thoughtful creation of your own artifacts, documenting your emerging learning. So here, fancy academic language for, hey, I want you to be thinking about the assignments when you're doing it and be thoughtful, be creative. And, the assignments that you're producing, those could actually end up being portfolio pieces or whatever. At the very least, the assignments that you will be doing, the activities you'll be working on, they're intended to document your learning trajectory. As I said, the way that I've structured this course and the learning materials and assignments is based upon the learning sciences. This is my background. This is my home. Learning sciences, those are my people. My doctoral program was one of the first and most prominent digital media and learning doctoral programs rooted in the learning sciences, and it was an absolutely amazing journey. And I got to learn up close and personal with many of the the leading experts, many of the thought leaders in the field of the learning sciences, and I still work with them today. What you need to know about the learning sciences is that it's different. See, most education programs focus on traditional educational psychology. But the problem there is that it's horribly reductionist. The learning sciences, as you can see from this slide, is, well, it's interdisciplinary. And it invites and encourages contributions from a huge range of specialty areas. And this list isn't even exhaustive. It's a dynamic field that's changing the way that we think about all of the factors that go into learning, designing learning, evaluating learning, measuring learning, all of that. So this, combined with organizational pressures to show learning outcomes, gains in tangible, quantifiable terms, and I'll get to that in the next slide. These two components, industry context and what the learning sciences has to offer us, is why the work that I'm doing in this program is absolutely informed by, embedded in, and incorporates the learning sciences. So let's talk a little bit about one of the trends that makes the learning sciences the natural go-to in forming what we're learning in this program. One of the things is, and I struggled with the title to this slide because I might have said increased need for evaluation, increased amount of assessment, all those sorts of things. But really the end result of those tactics is that no matter the organization, whether it's business, industry, manufacturing, education, nonprofit, there's this need for enhanced, increased, improved, but really effective outcome documentation of any training intervention. And so what we're seeing across organizations and in terms of organizational development right now is that there's an overall increase in accountability. And especially where training and any sort of training is concerned, there's a need for justification of the training and this thing called ROI, return on investment. And this is where training needs to justify what they're doing in terms of their outcomes. So they need to ground their training in an identified need in the company, a problem, but not just a problem that matters to organization priorities. Oftentimes something in the strategic plan, or it might be something in the goals that have been identified for process improvement or employee performance quality improvement, all those sorts of things. There are many different points where organizations identify what their problems are. It could also be a self-identified, perhaps, bottleneck in a system that an employee comes forward and says, hey, there needs to be something different here. Either way, there has to be a rationale in most cases for why you're doing the training. The other thing that I need to really clarify is that increasingly businesses consider not only hard expenses, such as, technology, printing, instructional resources, and things like that, when they're thinking about the cost of producing a training program or intervention. There are a lot of hidden expenses that have historically been neglected when thinking about the cost of training. So things like staff time in developing the learning intervention, the cost of producing the learning materials, not just publishing them, but the cost of actually designing them and getting them ready for the production process, the loss of production during the intervention, the potential reduction in productivity while employees are learning to implement a new process or strategy, or to adopt a new technology, or to perform in a new way. And then also taking a look at the potential implications on both internal and external customers while the training is being conducted, while the intervention is taking place, meaning improvements are being made, changes are being made, and how that time may impact things like product distribution, delivery, quality, all of that. For a major investment in a training program, let's say converting over to a new computer system when you have a workforce of, let's say, 1,000 people. All of those factors need to be taken into account, and actually all of those factors and many more need to be considered in the implementation plan so that any potential slowdowns, decreases in quality, all of that, and increases in mistakes can be proactively identified and mitigated. So return on investment takes all of these things into consideration in varying degrees in varying organizations, and then looks at that in light of the potential positive contributions that the learning intervention is intended to provide. So this is what some very formal organizations are doing and requiring of training and learning development. And they're also expecting the division, the groups that work in training and learning development to engage in documentation of their intervention outcomes and engage in continuous improvement, have program evaluations, intervention evaluations, identify areas that they need to improve, and then have a continuous improvement plan. Now, I want to point out that these are really emerging expectations for training, instructional design, and learning environment design in the field. As I said, the larger corporations, those that are more formal, are much more sophisticated in terms of these sorts of demands. But this is being spread throughout the entire industry. And what this is really going to require is absolutely grounding in the learning sciences, but it's going to require you to be, really innovative, open to considering new approaches and looking at new tools. In addition, another factor that's driving the need for applying learning sciences instead of just educational psychology is an audience or student-centered focus to training and learning. So by this I mean a focus on the learner or the audience that's more holistic, and looking at the learner in terms of their needs, how they need to learn, what they need to learn, what are the characteristics of the learner that may affect how the actual intervention is taken up, accommodations for the learner's context, and all the varied characteristics of what it means to connect a learning intervention with a learner. We are going to get to that in a while. It's coming later in the course. It's extremely important, but I'm not going to go into that any further here.